A recent poll asked 1,000 Americans what they thought the United States dollar was backed by. The shocking part about this was that 29% of those surveyed said that they thought the US dollar was still backed by gold. Now, I'm sure this will not come as any shock to you, but obviously the US dollar is not backed by anything other than the fact that if you don't collect enough of them throughout the year to give back to the US government, who created them in the first place, they'll just send you to prison for something called not paying your taxes. Now, for a long time, people didn't care that the United States dollar wasn't backed by anything because as long as it was managed well, then the purchasing power was fairly stable. So individuals and countries around the world were happy to use US dollars for international trade and also to borrow and lend in US dollars. But as I have been saying for a very long time, and the mainstream is now starting to point out as well, many countries around the world are looking for a way out of King Dollar. Because the US dollar has not been managed well for the last couple of years, and people are waking up. They're seeing their purchasing power eroded month after month and year after year, and they're seeing the value of their debt go down as the dollars they're getting back aren't purchasing the same amount of stuff than the dollars they originally lent. Further than that, many countries around the world are getting scared that the sanctions and the tactics that the United States government is using against its enemies, like Russia, may someday be used against them. And it's not just the big boys like Russia and China that are vocal about trying to get away from the dollar. Right now, there are at least a dozen smaller countries in Asia experimenting with this. Now again, this probably isn't coming as any major shock to you and I, but the fact that it's now starting to hit the mainstream confirms that all the signposts of de-dollarization that I've been showing you guys for the last couple of years, and plenty of other people like me, are now starting to come true as the mainstream is starting to point them out as well. Because as this article points out, for a long time it was almost unthinkable for countries to explore payment mechanisms that would bypass US dollars or the SWIFT network. Now, the countries with the largest incentive to escape the dollar are obviously going to be countries like China and Russia. They have the most to benefit from establishing a payment system that they're currently trying to plan that would allow them international payments without the use of the dollar. But that also means that other countries around the area like Bangladesh, Kazakhstan, Laos also then have a benefit to participating in this. Even India is now talking about internationalizing their currency, the rupee. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it plenty of more times, but this exposes the need for a monetary system governed by rules, not by rulers. A system with a foundation that cannot change allows for a structure that is dynamic to be built on top of it. Just how well do you think you'd be able to stand and move on a floor that was constantly changing? You would fall over pretty quickly. And the monetary system is the foundation of the economy. It needs to be governed by unchanging, immutable rules, not rulers who make it up as they go. This is why some described the sanctions on Russia as a financial nuclear weapon. Because while it may have had some of its intended effect on Russia, it forced them to lean on their own version instead. This means that other countries could be concerned that this will be used against them as a political tool. And it also forces those countries who already had an incentive to try and escape the dollar, it forces them into escaping the dollar because they can't use it anymore. Now, other than affecting political decisions for countries around the world, this is also affecting business decisions for companies around the world. Companies are getting caught in the crossfire and are facing compliance obligations and other pressures. And now, given the inflation that we had during 2020 and 2021, the Federal Reserve's fight against inflation is making the dollar's strength around the world an even bigger problem. Because the dollar is now strengthening versus other currencies, forcing inflation on the rest of the world, as they've seen the prices of things like food soar and getting harder and harder to repay their debt, leading in some cases to default, like in the case of Sri Lanka. At the end of the day, like I've said before, this exposes the need for countries to build a backdoor system just in case if they ever need to stop using the dollar, that they will be fine. That also exposes the need for individuals like you and I to be able to hedge ourselves against having to use the dollar. What would you do if tomorrow they shut off your bank account? You don't think that's possible? The IRS does it every single day. The Patriot Act allows financial institutions to do this every single day. You've got a bank that doesn't like the business that you're operating, they can shut down your bank account today and force you to go somewhere else when all the others have the same rules. So it's a good question to ask yourself, really, what would you do if tomorrow you logged on to your bank account and you found out your account was frozen? Would you be able to survive, and for how long? Do you have an escape from the fiat global dollar financial system? And if your answer is that you'd be SOL, well, maybe it's time to start building yourself a lifeboat. And one last note, I will be speaking at Jason Hartman's event in Scottsdale, Arizona from January 27th through 29th, the Empowered Investor Live Conference. It's going to be a fantastic event featuring speakers like Jason Hartman, Ken McElroy, Tom Wheelwright, and George Gammon. I'd love to see you there. Get your tickets with the link in the description below. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.